15th, 2018. We'll now call to order the City Council meeting for the City of Statesboro. At this time, we will have our invocation and pledge of allegiance by Councilman Sam Lee Jones.
Good morning. Let us pray. The Creator of the universe, we at this point we say thank you for just waking us up, and we invoke you to come into this place, knowing that you're already here. And Father, thank you for just waking us up and blessing each of our citizens of Statesboro, our guests, and our staff. Bless them in a mighty way, O Lord. And Father, we ask for peace, we ask for courage, we ask for wisdom, O Lord, as we sit down together to make decisions for the betterment of this town. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, we say, Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move down to agenda item 3, which is the recognition of public presentations. We have a presentation of a proclamation recognizing National Radiological Week. And the proclamation reads as follows. A proclamation by the Mayor and City Council of Statesboro, Georgia, the National Radiology Technology Week. Whereas the health of our citizens is a major concern and responsibility of healthcare professionals serving the citizens of Statesboro, and whereas qualified practitioners who specialize in the use of medical radiation and imaging technology to aid in the diagnosis and treatment of disease share a commitment to bring the people of this community a safer, more compassionate environment now and in the future. And whereas professionals in the radiological sciences are dedicated to the highest standard of professionalism and continually maintain those standards through education, lifelong learning, credentialing, and personal commitment. And whereas November the 4th through November 10th, 2018 has been designated National Radiological Technology Week to focus on the safe medical radiation environment provided through the skilled and conscientious efforts of radiological technologies. Now, therefore, I, Jonathan McCollum, Mayor of the City of Statesboro, do hereby proclaim November the 4th through the 10th, 2018, as Radiological Technology Week in Statesboro, Georgia, and urge all of our citizens to recognize this event and participate in its observance. Given under my hand this 6th day of November 2018, Jonathan McCollum, Mayor of the City of Statesboro. All right, thank you. And I think Ms. Kendria is here to accept this on behalf of Georgia Southern and their radiological students and staff. Bye. We'll move on down to area 3B, which is recognition of employee of the quarter. Christine.
Good morning, Mayor, council members, and guests. The Personnel One Employee Quarter 2 for fiscal year 2019. It has been with the city for 20 years. And I know he's extremely busy, so I'm not going to be too long. In summary, Rob displays effective leadership, meticulous administrative skill, and a goal-oriented mindset. He is active in the community, serves with utmost integrity, and displays initiative. Rob should be the next city employee of the quarter, and I give him my highest recommendation. That was a short, brief part of what was said. It was a little bit over a page. And with that being said, Rob Ryan, you definitely deserve this, and congratulations on Employee of the Quarter. And if the council members can come down, please, for a picture.
Can't see the camera, the camera can't see you. Is that it?
All right, congratulations. This bank is gonna take it. It's a special bank. We'll move down to section 3C, which is a presentation by Statesboro Fire Chief and Bullock County Fire Chief regarding the Insurance Service Office and its public protection classification.
Good morning, Tim Grant, Fire Chief. I have with me this morning Chief Chris from the Bullock County Fire Department. I want to take a few minutes of your time this morning and let you guys know that, as you know, we both, Bullock County and Statesboro Fire, underwent an ISO evaluation back in 2017, and both were, we feel, were successful. Bullock County was able to maintain their classification as a 5X, right? 5X, sorry. And then Statesboro was able to actually improve from a 3 to a 2Y. Part of the conversations that the city and county have been having as far as the fire district is some of the concerns raised over ISO and affording more residents in that fire district. The lower classification thereby allowing them to receive the lower insurance premiums that come along with that score. And one of the things that Chris and I had discussed was really trying to get out and educate folks about ISO itself, because there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings. So what we wanted to do was we have a brief presentation. This presentation is the intent is to take it out into the community and different civic organizations, homeowners associations, and different groups, and simply answer some of those questions that we get. Both Chief Ivy and I received multiple phone calls today with ISO questions, and most folks think that the fire department is the one that is causing their insurance premiums to go up. While this really isn't an issue in the city, because everybody within the city limits is receiving or should be eligible for that Class 2 classification, we did want to at least let you guys know what it is that we are kind of presenting to the public in education, in case you guys were getting questions. So the first thing is we want to make sure that everybody kind of understands who ISO is. The Insurance Services Office is an independent company, so they don't necessarily work for the insurance companies, and they don't necessarily work for the individual communities or municipalities or counties that the fire districts that they are evaluating. But what they do is they provide data regarding the community's fire protection services to insurance companies through their public protection classification program. What they do is they gather and analyze the fire protection data using a fire suppression rating schedule, and we're going to talk about that here in just a few moments. But I want to make sure that one of the biggest misconceptions out there is the fire department's role in the ISO process. No fire department, including Statesboro nor Bullock County, have direct involvement or influence with how an individual insurance companies assign the PPC classification, nor how the PPC classification is utilized in determining their premiums for their property insurance. So basically the fire department's involvement is that we are evaluated, we take the test, which is basically what that fire suppression rating schedule is a test, and based on that score, they sell that data to the insurance companies, and then different insurance companies utilize it differently, and that's how they determine the rates. It is not the only thing that determines their homeowners' rates, but it is a key piece in it. Insurance companies and/or their underwriters that have subscriptions to ISO should have an ISO representative or a liaison that can be contacted with questions, concerns, and disputes. One of the problems that we are encountering is that we are constantly receiving phone calls from mostly insurance agents and insurance companies, but from time to time homeowners wanting to know about their classification and why they're not getting this classification or why they're not getting this water source recognized, so on and so forth. It's important that we're trying to educate the community is that we have no direct influence. This is an ISO program, therefore ISO needs to be the one that is dealing with these questions and concerns, not necessarily the fire department. What we're finding is that if the fire department goes out and tries to answer those questions and then ISO is not having the same information, it creates a lot of confusion and then leads to just more frustration and aggravation on the homeowner's parts. We do work directly with ISO when questions exist with a specific location. Examples of this would be how far they are from one of our fire stations, location of a water source that we have feel is credible and meets the requirements, which we'll talk about that here in just a second. Both the county and the city fire departments, we utilize the ISO rating schedule, but we also utilize other standards and best practices to ensure that the best possible services are being delivered. So what that means is that neither the Bullitt County nor Statesboro base their fire service delivery strategy on what that ISO score is going to be. So we base it on what the needs of our community and how we best feel to provide that, and use other standards like NFPA and best practices to achieve that. But we certainly keep ISO in mind because we do understand how important it is when it comes to insurance premiums and what our citizens are paying for their insurance. We both actively work toward achieving and maintaining the best PPC rating possible. We are constantly looking at different things to change or tweak or improve upon that would help with our next evaluation. So very quickly, just wanted to basically go over how the fire departments are rated or scored. There's 4 basic elements that the community fire protection system is evaluated upon. One is being communication, so this is our 911 system and radio system. There's a possible 10 points. We scored fairly well. I think we had right around 8 or 9 points. That is the one score that both Bullitt County and Statesboro have that is exactly the same because we share the same communications facilities and equipment and resources. The fire department is the biggest part of the rating schedule. That's 50 possible points. They look at things such as our response times, our personnel, our training hours, things of that nature, so it is a big piece of it. The next biggest piece of the rating schedule, and this is the one that is creating the most frustration, questions, and confusion, is the water supply. It's worth 40 points, so it is a huge chunk. And we're going to talk about that here in just briefly in just a minute. In 2013, ISO revamped their rating schedule, and they added what they call community risk reduction. And instead of reshuffling the percentages in each, they just added 5.5 points. So now the total score that you can achieve in an ISO evaluation is 105.5 points. ISO assigns the communities the PPC rating or the classification based on our score. So if we got 9 out of 10 in communications, if we get 40 out of 50, 30 out of 20, you add that up, and then 3 bonus points, you can see how that number comes to be. The classifications range 1 through 10. 1 representing exceptional fire protection. 1 is the best that you can achieve. 10 represents that ISO does not meet ISO minimum requirements for fire protection. The 10 is basically considered, in layman's terms, no fire protection, no recognized fire protection for that individual. Both Bullitt County and Statesboro currently have split classifications. It's important that we explain what a split classification is because some folks are receiving the lower insurance premium, and then there are some cases where their neighbor is not, and it's all due to their proximity to water and things of that nature. Bullitt County is a 5-5X, and they were formerly, the 5X was formerly represented by the 9. I don't know why ISO decided to kind of confuse and add letters instead of just keeping the digit, but that's what they did. And as I've already mentioned, they were last evaluated in 2017. Statesboro Fire Department is an ISO Class 2-2Y as October 1st, 2018. As I mentioned, we did improve from the 3. The 2Y was formerly listed as the 8B, and I know many of you, we've had conversations on the difference between that 9 and that 8B, and that's basically just the amount of water that you're carrying and how quickly you can put that on is what is the difference between the 9 and the 8B. Real quickly, and we're gonna briefly discuss some of these a little bit more in depth, but I want to provide a breakdown of what classification the requirements for each. So if you're within 5 road miles of a fire station and within 1,000 feet of an ISO recognized water source, and that word is key, recognized. If you're in the Bullitt County Fire District, you are a Class 5. If you're in the Statesboro Fire District, you are a Class 2. If you are within 5 road miles from a fire station and no ISO recognized water source within 1,000 feet, then you are a Class 5X in Bullitt County and a 2Y in Statesboro. If you are more than 5 road miles but less than 7 road miles and have 1,000 or within 1,000 feet of a recognized water source, they have a classification of what they call a 10W. So basically, the ISO says, well, we know you're more than 5 miles, but you got this water, so we'll give you some credit. I'm not really sure what the difference is in premiums. That's a fairly new classification that they put into the new schedule. And then if you are more than 5 road miles, but less than 7 road miles with no water, or you are more than 7 miles period, regardless of your water situation, you are a Class 10. So you can understand how important it is for residents to be within a certain distance of fire stations. Credible water, again, this is the biggest question that we get, and I think what is the most confusing for folks. As part of the process, ISO has a specific set of requirements and criteria for a water source to be considered credible. That credible water source can be several different things, and it includes the fire hydrants, which most folks would associate with, fire departments getting water from. But we can also use draft or suction points such as ponds and lakes and rivers and things of that nature. The criteria for the fire hydrants, and this is regardless if it is a municipal owned system or a privately owned system, the criteria stays the same. It has to be able to produce at least 250 gallons a minute for a duration of 2 hours. It must be tested and maintained on an annual basis, which is in accordance to ISO standards. And there must be a user agreement between the owner of a water system which supplies fire department hydrants and the responding fire department. Obviously, that is not an issue for us in the city of Statesboro because the city owns the water and we are a city department, so we really don't run into that. Where this becomes very critical is in the fire district where we have multiple privately owned water systems. Just because we are the fire department does not give us the right to go use a private water system even in the event of emergency. I use this term or this analogy with folks that don't understand. They just think that, hey, it's a fire hydrant, you're a fire department. It's basically, that would be the same process of a police officer being able to come into your home simply because he's a police officer. It is not our property, it is not ours. Now, most folks do not have a problem with us using their fire hydrants, and that's what they're there for, and we do have some, some flexibility there in the events of emergency. But for ISO credible water source, we have to have those agreements. The criteria for a draft or a suction point to be recognized as credible water, it has to have a 50-year drought study completed, which, believe it or not, is extremely difficult to find folks that can conduct those. That's one of the challenges that Chief Ivy and I are currently trying to work through, is to find folks that would be capable and willing to complete some of these drought studies. The site must be all-weather accessible 24/7, 365, and what that means is we have to be able to get a fire truck within 20 feet of the pond or the river or wherever it is we're going to be pulling the water from. Again, just as with the private system, we have to have a user agreement. for the property that the suction point is located on. This is usually in the form of an easement. Again, we must be able to pull 250 gallons a minute from that point for a duration of 2 hours. And again, the site must be tested and maintained in accordance with ISO standards. Really, the only testing that would be required is if there was a dry hydrant, which is, you may have seen the big white PVC pipes that kind of stick up out of the ground next to a pond. We do have some around in the city and some of our locations. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have. But again, this was the intent for Chief Ivy and I is to take this information and start trying to educate folks in the fire district and in the county, again, and work together to try to improve the ISO not only for citizens in the fire district but across the county. And that is part of those negotiations with the fire contract and things of that nature. And I feel that we will make capable of making gains in that area of accomplishing that.
Council, any questions?
I do, Mayor. Chief, will the new radio system help those points allotted for that? Segment of the evaluation?
Yes and no. Yes, in the fact that interoperability is an enormous piece of this. But really, the key thing that they look at is if someone has a fire and they call 911, how quickly is 911 able to dispatch the fire department, and how reliable is the fire department able to communicate with their units, mutual aid units, automatic aid units, and back to the dispatch center to call for additional resources. I am certainly not an expert on the radio situation. I know enough to speak intelligently about, but my understanding is that the need for the radio system is simply because of the technology that's currently being used is not going to be as reliable as it needs to be, which could, yes, indeed, face the ISO score.
Any further discussion by council?
Yeah, Chief, are there, with respect to the 5 Mile District in particular, are there any current ordinances or development guidelines that say that, if you put it in a new subdivision or whatever, that the water system, especially for you guys, maybe not the water system for the homes, but, the fire suppression systems have to be of a standard that meets our connection capabilities? Do those exist in the county right now, or is it just a practice, but there's nothing written?
The county's water ordinances or standards are not up to, I guess, where we need them to be for fire protection. Now, to be completely fair, we, as part of the conversations that Chief Ivy and I have had with the fire committee, they understand that, and they know that we're going to need to improve on that and implement some ordinances along with some other things. And I don't think it's something that we're looking at just for the fire district. I think, and Chief Ivy, you jump in if I'm speaking out of turn or incorrectly, but I think that's something they're looking to do countywide. When the county put in, my understanding was when the county first developed those that water criteria and those standards, it was for rural firefighting. So basically, filling up fire trucks. And the practices and the way that we approach firefighting now has changed to where we want that sustained water. And that's really where we're starting to run into some problems. So those fire hydrants, most of them are capable of filling up a fire truck. The problem is it may take 20, 30 minutes, and we need it a lot quicker and sustained. So
let's face it, the two big components for you is response time and how much water you can put on that.
I think that if you break down ISO to the very basic, I think folks need to understand they need to have, it really comes down to how well your fire department is equipped and staffed and is able to get to the fire, and then yes, how much water is available for that suppression operation. That is basically what it boils down to.
Chief, one last question for me is as it relates to the 5 Mile District, are there those water sources that we don't currently have agreements with that allow you to use that water?
We are working on all of that. There are private systems out there that do meet the 250 requirement, and then we have some that are not going to meet the 250 requirement. And that's where the fire committee is working, and I think that I know Chief Ivy and I both agree that our best option is going to be to create a water shuttle for both the county and the city. I know there was talks at one time about a long coastway and things of that nature. I think that's all been kind of taken off the table for various reasons, but but it is important for everyone to understand that that is going to require additional resources in the form of apparatus and personnel.
Like I said, I'm glad to see that you've been proactive in working with the Chief. It's a good point that you continue to agree with the private owners, because definitely need that if something happens.
Yeah.
And that 2X is definitely, as a homeowner, I appreciate that 2X rating, because it helps me with the law. Would you agree?
Yes, there is an enormous advantage talking with homeowners that were receiving before the Class 2 went into effect. They were getting the 3, and then and that's nothing that we did. ISO started. They implemented some new mapping technology and things of that nature. So a lot of folks were getting the Class 3 that were, I guess, in the simplest way I can put it, to be just completely blunt, was they shouldn't have been getting it. Mm-hmm. So they went from a 3 to a 9, and we've got some folks that are very, very frustrated, completely understandable. I had several folks come in that says that their insurance went up and basically is almost as much as their mortgage payment. So it's an enormous amount of money that we're talking about between those two classifications.
Any further questions or comments by council?
Just add by the fact that as Councilman John mentioned, the video systems are very important, and hopefully that comes to pass, and that the county area recognizes how important it is, and we can work at that together.
Yeah, I agree. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is public comments. Ms. Sue, you got anyone signing public comments? All right, we'll move on to agenda item 5, consideration of a motion to approve the consent agenda. The approval of minutes for the meeting on 10/16, council meeting, and then 10/30, which is called council meeting as well. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. All right, we're going to look at agenda items 6, 7, 8, and 9. And we're going to ask that is open up for public hearing. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, Frank, if you will, enlighten us.
Yes, sir. As you remember, this item was tabled at the previous city council meeting. The variance request 180907, variance 180908, variance 180909, and rezoning 180906. The location is at University Plaza. It's a zoning map amendment from CR, commercial retail, to PUD, plan unit development variance from Article 14, Section 1402 regarding lot regulations, a variance from Article 16, Section 1600 regarding off-street parking facilities, a variance from Article 10, Section 1002 regarding building height regulations. The applicant is Mr. Robert Forrest of Stone Wall Companies. The owner is LSCG Fund 2 University Plaza LLC, Henry and Charlene Doyle and Doyle Rentals LLC. The property contains 2.994 acres. Specifically, the applicant is proposing to construct a new mixed-use development on a combination of parcels at University Plaza located on George Avenue near the corner of Chandler Road to be used for student housing and retail. The proposed design includes ground floor retail of about 18,500 square feet, leasing office and community amenity spaces included at an elevated amenity terrace with gym and study rooms. Residential units, 464 total beds across 116 units. The applicant is requesting a variance from Article 1402 regarding lot regulations, which requires a minimum lot size of 10 acres to be considered for the PUD Planned Unit Development Zoning District. The applicant is proposing a minimum lot size of 2.994 acres. Next, the applicant is requesting a zoning map amendment from CR zoning district to the PUD zoning district in order to develop the property as a mixed-use student housing, which is not allowed in the existing zoning designation. Additionally, the applicant requests a variance from Article 16 regarding off-street parking facilities, which requires a minimum of 494 parking spaces for this type of proposed development. At the time of application, they were proposing 270 parking spaces. Finally, the applicant is requesting a variance from Article 10, Section 1002 regarding building height regulations, which restricts building heights to a maximum height of 50 feet when approved by the Board of Appeals. The applicant is proposing a maximum building height of 68 feet. And you'll see that in the illustrations that are in your package. Of course, this is the parcel in question is highlighted, known as University Plaza. It is made up of a number of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parcels, you'll see. This is the site in question. I think most people are familiar with it. Looking up and down Georgia Avenue. Next door to the Zaxby's, across the street from the student housing in Landrum. Of course, Dingus McGee's is across the street. There's Landrum. Housing to the rear, student housing, and residential across the street. Additional parking on door 7. This is the proposed site plan for the project. These are some architectural renderings that they have provided. Some additional renderings. As you know, Planning Commission voted unanimously to approve this at the October 2nd, 2018 meeting. Staff recommended denial based on the parking requirements alone. Recommended approval for the remaining variances and rezonings. But since that time, we have met with developers and have negotiated some additional requirements for this development, and they are included in your package. They include a minimum requirement of 0.7 parking spaces required per bed, 0.5 parking spaces per bed will be required on-site, 0.16 parking spaces per bed will be required within a 1 mile radius of the development site's location. This condition does not include the required parking spaces for proposed commercial uses. Required parking spaces for the commercial space will be per the ordinance, and this will be a requirement prior to the building permit being issued that these parking spaces are either provided on-site or at a different location, whether it's through a lease agreement or property ownership. B, a rental lease agreement for each dwelling unit, limited to 2 parking spaces. A rental lease agreement will be required to be reviewed and approved by staff prior to the CO issuance. And again, they have provided that lease agreement that's in your package as well. Finally, staff approval of PUD site plan dated August 28, 2018, which is in the package as well. And of course, at the last meeting, this item was taken. I think there's some folks here to represent both sides.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak for the request?
Good morning. For the record, my name is Joe Maxwell, Maxwell Reddick and Associates. I have with me here today Robert Forrest from Stonewall Companies. Really, Frank has done a wonderful job of presenting this project. Of course, in the last meeting, we discussed a lot of options and the conditions that were presented by the staff. The developer doesn't agree with those conditions. So, for the sake of time, I would love to yield before any opposition, if I could reserve our time to offer rebuttal, if any, to the opposition. Council, so please.
Is there anyone here to speak against?
Hey, I am Margie Williamson. I am the president of the Statesboro Area Apartment Association. You guys all saw me last time. I know that the biggest issue with you guys was the tax money. I think that we've done a lot of research in the last few weeks to kind of come up with a good counterpart to that argument. This isn't just about competition. I want y'all all to understand that. We have plenty of competition, so that's nothing new for us. That does not scare us at all. The issue here is the crime, and you guys aren't understanding the ripple effect that this is going to bring. We are already collectively are at a vacancy loss of $8.8 million a year for all the properties in the association. That was information that I didn't have at the last meeting. So if you bring this new property in, this new development, on top of the one that's going on South Main Street already, you're going to cause us, like you said last time, to have to drop our rates just to fill our bedrooms, which is going to make our property value go down, which is going to make our property taxes go down. So by bringing in this extra tax money, you're not really helping the city, and it's really kind of offsetting what we're going to be losing and what you're going to be losing from our tax money. Some of the issues that we talked about last time were crime. I'm not sure how many of you have students at Georgia Southern or are familiar with Eagle Alerts, and I talked about it last time. Eagle Alerts only cover violent crimes within a 500-mile radius of the campus. Just in the past 7 weeks, we've had 4 Eagle Alerts. Again, that's 500 feet from the campus. 4 in 7 weeks. Park Place alone, that was one of the properties we really talked about last time, has had 7 violent crimes in the last 30 days. That's the element that we're saying that reducing our rates closer to campus is going to be pushing those people closer to us. So that's going to add to the 4 over 7 weeks that we've had. You're talking about 7 incidents in 30 days that is going to be within 500 feet of the campus. If we put this project in place and have more student housing and push all these other people towards us, we're dropping our rates again, taxes are going down for those of us who are already in existence, and you're inviting more crime closer to campus. So again, more crime closer to campus. No mama is going to want to be 4 or 5 hours away from her child and get all these Eagle Alerts where she has no clue what's going on and feel confident about her child attending Georgia Southern. And then the parking that you guys mentioned, part of the variance was to add additional spots within a mile of the property. Would you want your child to walk a mile, to park a mile away from their home just to get to their apartment when you don't have enough parking? The people who can afford a new development also afford cars. You can ask any property manager here. The students who can afford cars can't afford that rent, so they're not going to be living there for the most part. This property will be full. Other properties will not be full. Again, our prices are going to drop, so is our property value. I know that you guys are interested in this tax money for increasing the police presence. We already are in need of increased police presence, and that's without adding more veterans. So by using this tax money to get more officers when we already need more officers, it's kind of like you're trying to fight a structure fire with a spray bottle. You're throwing sprinkles at a fire that already exists. It's very counterproductive. I know that y'all are looking at this money in dollar signs, and the city could use the money. It really could, but this project is too early for Southern. It's not, Southern is not grown to that level. You're going to push those of us who've been here for a long time. You're going to push us out, and we've been here. I mean, y'all were voted in by the majority of us. The only other point that I really wanted to make was that, sorry, it's too early and I haven't had enough coffee yet. You guys talked about us competing with Kennesaw. Okay, I don't think that you're comparing apples to apples when you compare Southern and Kennesaw. If any of you have ever really done, and Jeff, you work at the university, so you deal with college students every day just like we do. But if you talk to the students to ask them what they want, the majority of them had the option to go to Kennesaw. But they chose Statesboro, they chose Georgia Southern because they didn't want that city life. They wanted to get away from that city life. The majority of our students come from the Atlanta area. They wanted the small town feel with all the benefits of a big college. You can go online. I mean, I did. I asked all of our housing consultants who are students at Southern why they chose Southern over everybody else. I didn't give them any background why I was asking, but they said because it's a big college, they can get all the same educational benefits, but it's a small town feel. They wanted to get away from the city life. on the Georgia Southern reviews online, you see review after review after review where people are saying they love the small town life. So you're wanting to turn us into a school that people are coming here to avoid. And again, I think it's very counterproductive. We can get that tax money in other places. There are plenty of properties that could be cleaned up and made nicer. The plaza, I mean, I'm sure that there are plenty of ordinance violations just the way it is now. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but if we looked at, at our city ordinances and you guys started enforcing some of those and forced those owners to start cleaning up those areas, I think that you'll see the same result. We'll have a better place for students to go. We'll have something that's not such an eyesore for Jeff to look out of his office window at every day. And we'll be able to increase tax values and sustain preserve what we have already, the small town feel with a big school. And I think that we're all losing sight of what's really important just because this is a potential big tax dollar investment. And that's not what Statesboro is about. Statesboro is about family and, small town environment. Georgia Southern is the heart of Statesboro, and you guys really need to consider what brings students here. It's not a retail place. It's not housing. It's not the latest and greatest. It's our school. It's our atmosphere. It's our community. It's our involvement with the community, with the school. And I think that bringing this in is going to change the whole dynamic of what Georgia Southern represents, what Statesboro represents. And I mean, do you guys really want to do that? Do we want to be Kennesaw and Statesboro? I can't even imagine how the locals would think about that. Yes, it would be great to have more retail options, more restaurant options, and not have to drive to Cooler. But at what cost? I mean, are we going to feel safe with our children walking around campus knowing that all this violence is going on that close? Is any parent going to feel safe with that same dynamic when they're 4 or 5 hours away and they can't get to their kid? I mean, it's different when you're right down the road, but when you're in another state, when you're in another town, and you can't just hop in the car and be there within 30 minutes or an hour, are you going to feel confident sending your child to a school like that? So I know that you guys are probably all, in agreement with this, but I really am going to, play on your heartstrings for just a minute and think about why you went to Georgia Southern. Was it for a retail development? Was it for a high-rise student housing project? I mean, did you guys have to deal with the crime that we're dealing with now? Would you send your children to that? Oh, and we did print out some stuff just so you guys can see the crime, because this is what the police department, when parents call their accident, this is what the police department tells them to do, is go online and see the crime in the area. We also printed up a list to show you guys just over the last 3 years the decrease in occupancy and what we've had to give away just to get to that point. Just what we had to give away just to get to the occupancy that we got to, and it shows the vacancy loss that we're all experiencing. I mean, you're looking at the potential tax dollars that this is going to bring in. What about the potential tax dollars that it's going to also kick out? Oh, and another thing that one of our members mentioned, and I don't think it was even addressed at the last meeting, is have we really done studies about the traffic in that area once this project is in place? Like, it's already kind of congested there, but when you add in 460 bedrooms of those people, and the majority of them probably are going to drive, how much additional traffic is it going to bring into that area? And how safe is that going to be for the students that are walking? Unless y'all have questions.
We will get to council discussion.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who wants to speak against?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Michael Classen. I'm speaking on behalf of Jim Peary, a business owner in University Plaza. And while I appreciate Ms. Williamson's heartfelt appeal, I'm going to address the matter from a different point of view. And that's not to say that I disagree with anything she said. I think it was all well put. What I mean is I don't think I can improve on it. As I look through the ordinances and the request, it occurs to me, and there's no definition of this. I actually looked through Article 2, and yeah, I'm going to use the magic word of spot zoning. Everybody's heard those two words. I don't know how else you would define it than this. There's a rezoning request and 3 variances that, taken together, essentially say, we don't care about these ordinances. We're going to do this. Is this a rezoning? Is this a variance? Is it spot zoning? It sure as heck looks like spot zoning. Not going to rezone the entire district. And if you look at section 1400, where it talks about a planned unit development district, it says you can authorize uses in the district where the lot is located. Now this, in that context, and you have to read these words literally, figuratively, you all wrote these words. This is a set of ordinances that the council and mayor have written, approved, reviewed, revised. This is a commercial retail district. So when it says use is not permitted in the district, that's the kind of district we're talking about. What is significant in these words is that it goes on to say, however, use is not permitted in the district where the lot is located shall not be permitted to occupy more than 10% of the lot area or nor more than 10% of the building floor area. I looked through this proposal and we're using way more than 10% of the 2.9 acres. If that ordinance means anything, and if you do allow the PUD for this tract, then that limitation has to apply, and it's right there in the plain language. However, you also have to look at what I think is perhaps most important. What is the intent of the zoning ordinance overall? And it's in Article 1. It says the purpose here is to regulate, among other things, and I'm paraphrasing, taking out, these the words I'm about to use are in here. Population density, intensity of land use, off-street parking, overcrowding, and congestion. Now it says we're to regulate those things, we being the city represented by all of you, not to prevent them. But what is proposed here is extreme. You're going to have 500 people on a 3-acre lot going up 70 feet in the air roughly, which is twice as much as the 35-foot maximum, which 35-foot maximum, according to the ordinances, may be increased up to 50. This is even 20 feet beyond that. This thing is twice as high. It is going to alter this area in a way that is much more significant than anyone could imagine. This building is going to dwarf everything else in the area. It is literally going to cast a shadow on that whole area. And I think this is important for everyone. I don't speak for any of the other business owners, but to the extent any of them disagree with me, I invite them to come up and make their point. Mr. Peary made a significant investment in buying this business 2 years ago. I think it would be disingenuous to avoid mention of the fact that historically there's been a problem there. In these 2 years, Mr. Peary has, for want of a better phrase, run a tight ship. Not one incident has occurred in his place of business, such as we've been unhappy with in the past. He has imposed discipline. He has run that business in the way that we want business owners to operate in Statesboro, whatever it is that their business involves. He's paid significant fees for the licensing, both to local and state authorities. He's paid his taxes. He's been a good citizen. And he depended on these zoning regulations when he made this investment. He's kept his word. He's hopeful that this investment will continue to grow and he will continue to reinvest in the community. Because these ordinances were held to by the people who made that pledge. If this rezoning, these variances, this spot zoning is approved, I put it to you that, at least I can make the argument, that that will work a condemnation of these business owners' interests. Because they'll be out of business. What do you do, for example, about somebody who paid $4,000 or $5,000 for a license to sell alcoholic beverages for 12 months and only got 6 months for it? What are you going to do about somebody who came in good faith, said this is a commercial area, I'm able to operate this business, provided I do so legally and in accordance with the ordinances. And then shortly into that tenure, the rules change and the business is gone. He and all the other business people, they're going to be gone. They're going to lose their businesses because of what this council is being asked to do. That is government taking of a private property interest. And that is a textbook definition of condemnation. And in this case, it will be not only without just compensation, as the Fifth Amendment and the Georgia Constitution both say, it will be a public taking from private uses, strictly disapproved in every instance where the issue has come up in the courts of this land. You need to think about what's being asked here and what the ripple effect is going to be on those business owners who depended on these ordinances when they made their commitment to come into this community and open businesses and serve the public. For as long as I can remember, this has been a commercial retail area. I go back and probably Mayor Hatcher is the only person here old enough to remember, as I do, the Oxford shop right there on the corner. Woods Barber Shop. Henry, God bless him, cut my hair for over 30 years. There's always been commercial activity there. That is the nature of this area. To come in at this late day and attempt this kind of development absolutely alters the character. It destroys the character of that area. And it's not strictly college students. For years and years, that area has served the community on that side of town. But I do think it's important to take a close look at these ordinances. If you read them all together as we're supposed to do, and you construe everything in the ordinances to be in harmony, it's inescapable that this is going to alter the character of the area, and in a negative way. Do you think it's crowded over there on Fair Road? It's going to make Northside Drive at midday look like a walk in the park. You're going to have 500 people living on this 3-acre lot, bringing cars. And what about the retail business downstairs? 18,000 square feet of retail space. That's going to require, if my math is correct, something like 35 or 40 additional parking spaces. And those spaces are people coming in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. This is an area that is already congested, as was pointed out earlier. This kind of congestion is going to create something that makes mayhem look like fun. And it's going to go on for 18 months, if I remember what I've been told. We have to close that road from that intersection, probably down to the other side of the lot. Where are people going to go? For 18 months. We're going to have things torn up, plumbing. And then we talk about the taxes, but you're going to lose from all those business people. You are going to have additional expenses. Do you not expect some question about the sewage and the water tie-in, do you not expect a request for some concessions on that because they're so high? I do think it's a pipe dream. It's an illusion to think about, oh, the tax money, you can pay. There's going to be some request, maybe not now and maybe not since I brought it up. But we're going to need to be relieved. We can't pay a $200 or $400 tie-in fee for every one of these places. And I don't pretend to know those regulations. I didn't read those. But it's something to bear in mind. But above all else, I think in Mr. Perry's staff, this is a dangerous road to head down. If the city permits these amendments, this is going to put him and several other folks out of business. They will not be compensated for the loss of business, and it will have been done at the hands of the city of Statesboro. That's a condemnation, and that's a bad thing to do under these circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak against? Yes, ma'am, come forward.
Good morning. I completely did not expect to speak today because public
State your
speaking,
name.
Hannah Mabry for the Collier Companies. It's just, this really hits home for me. I am a property manager. However, I did go to Georgia Southern. I came to Georgia Southern because I'm from a small town in South Carolina. Like she said, I wanted a small town feel. I came back to work in Statesboro. It's already lost a lot of that. Some for the better, some for the worse. But I started property management here, working at a complex on Lanier, which I'd rather not name to make them sound bad. But while I was there, I took calls from parents crying because of the ego alerts that went out. There were armed robberies, there were felony drug busts, there was a murder, and there were stabbings. I personally had to witness one of those. And now I'm a mother, and it's heartbreaking to even think that that can be. And for those of you who have children, imagine calling those offices and having to talk to me, and I have to tell you there's nothing you can do. You can't get your child out of their lease. They have to stay there and feel unsafe for the remainder of their time. Do you think they want to stay at Georgia Southern then? I wouldn't. Having to live there where there's murders, I feel like somebody busted my door at any given time. That's not safe. That's not good for the city, and that's not good for Georgia Southern. That's really all I have to say, but it's really supportive in what we have to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak against?
I'm Jamie Reese from the Price Company. I don't have anything written, but as far as what Mayor was saying, I think we need to have a plan in place with the police before we allow any more student housing in the Statesboro market. I wrote a trolling email, and I thought I'm better at writing than speaking. But the point is, in Charlotte, North Carolina, Meredith and I worked at the Greater Charlotte Apartment Association Government Affairs Board, and we spent about a decade ago, working with the city council because they were going to stop leasing by the bed altogether because they had gotten so overbuilt before the blue line, before the what was it, UNCC, the enrollment boom. We are at the point where we can stop that before we get there. Because I was being visited by police officers in this high crime Charlotte student area. They're like, hey, your rents are as low as $249 base. You know, drug dealers are setting up shop. It's like an extended stay hotel. And he was right. He was right. And the more beds we had, without a plan in place to police them, it's going to become a hotbed for crime. And it's going to be an affordable place for people to sling to. So in Charlotte, what we ended up working with the police and the city council was something called Niner's Choice. You could call it Eagle's Choice. It's like plug and play. You got a series of things, kind of like the fire department was showing us earlier. You get points for this and that. In order to build, in order for you guys to approve a new build, there should be these certain things, the 4-inch screws versus 2-inch screws on strike plates for extra safety, solid core doors on bedrooms instead of hollow core doors. We did installation of the blue poles, gates, and quarterly police ride-alongs. There's this whole rubric of things you could do for you to get past as a new build in Charlotte. And maybe we need to think about something like that before we start approving more housing. Visiting time to manage crime.
Thank you. Ms. Reese? Come forward. Come forward.
Yes, sir.
You in trouble?
It's cool.
Come on. Hold your hand up. You know that's not the truth.
Oh, cool. I wrote you on Facebook. And I screenshot it and sent it to Boyan when I was trolling him.
Okay.
Troll it when you like Thank you. I did better.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else to speak?
My name is Holly Smallgan. My question for you guys, we're all familiar, maybe not so much with Charlotte, but with Savannah and Augusta. I had the pleasure of talking with Mr. Razor earlier. We are seeing more and more residents from Savannah because they can afford to live here, because we do have to drop those rates. So for each and every one of you, do you want to be the next Savannah? Or do you want to be the next Augusta? Because that's where we're headed, and not in a good way. And that's all.
Anybody else to speak against? Okay. Is there anybody else to speak for or against?
Based on the opposition, of course, we had a lot of opposition. During our last meeting, and the crime is an issue. We all, hear about the crime and Eagle alerts. I have a son from Georgia Southern University. He gets the Eagle alerts. I tell him mute his phone. What is the answer to the Eagle alerts? What's the answer to it? That's the big question in the room. Is the status quo the answer? I'd say not. So keep going on the way we're going. That's not the answer. Revitalization of the areas, that was mentioned in our last meeting. When does that revitalization start? How does it start? This project is one of the key components of that revitalization. Does it create crime? I'd say no. Are there beds that need some reinvestment? Yes, definitely. How do we start that as a community? We have to crack eggs to make omelets. We have to find a starting point. What is it? The opposition talks about the taxes and the increase in taxes, the decrease in their taxes. But I'd like to ask the council and the property owners, how much of reinvestment has been performed to create those beds, say for instance Park Place. And Park Place is one that we all know. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, you said you live there.
That's right.
That particular complex is individually owned. Each unit is owned by a different person, or one person may own 2 or 3 units. And you can see from the community side, some renovations have occurred on some of those units, but not on the others. Across the street, Eagle Villas, I believe is the name of it, where we see the dumpster, it was brought up in the last council meeting, with the mattresses beside and all that, all the trash around it. That too is individually owned. I asked the city, some of the staff members, how do we clean that up? Code enforcement, who do you go to? Do you go to one house and ask them to go clean that up, or do you go to all of them? And how do you get them to do that as a community? So I ask those questions because this is a bigger problem than just one development. But where are we going to start that process? How are we going to start? I invite the council and our community to think and consider seriously in the future of looking at tax allocation districts similar to what is being performed on the Blue Mile. To get our citizens to reinvest in those properties. Is that going to happen today? No. That's not going to happen today during this meeting. But I do know that University Plaza has been there for many, many years. We all know it's been there. We know there's issues with it. How much money is being reinvested into that development other than the tenants that Mr. Classens represents today? I'd say very little, if any. The tenants themselves do the reinvestment. Same in the apartments. The tenants put up the blinds, the tenants clean the apartment, the tenants make it where it's livable. Really? Why are they so low rented? That's the question. And so how do we get the reinvestment into our community? How do we get revitalization into that area? How do we lower crime? This is a big question. But a vote no is status quo. We're going to continue down the path that we are on right now. As far as the lease tenants and all, I do feel for the leaseholders of this particular property. But that's a lease agreement between them and the current owners, and I don't know the terms of their lease. Are those countable, or are those, do they have 6-month lease? Those are between them and their leaseholder. We're here today trying to get approval to start the revitalization process in that area. Hopefully this project will promote folks to go into their properties and invest the money into those properties and revitalize those. I do love the idea of following Charlotte, North Carolina's process of trying to get community involvement into crime. Yeah, it's a big problem. How do we answer that? A vote no today, I believe, is really, again, a vote, let's continue down this problem. Let's continue down the road that we're on, that we have no solutions for those issues. So with that, I'll sit back down, and I'll give the floor to Mr. Robert, if he has anything to add, and with respectfully, thank you.
Robert Forrest with Stonewall Companies. Several things were said here today, which are all good points. I think there is a crime problem here. When I came here at Georgia Southern in '87, there wasn't as noticeable of a crime problem. Everything was new. I think Park Place, I don't even know if it was there yet. Eagles, this and that, and I lived in Oxford, and they tore that dog down after I left. Hopefully not for my reason, but it needed to go back then, and built new dorms, which are now old, I guess. And a lot of the stuff was shiny new. Russell was here. We were winning national championships. The football team, except for a hiccup last week, is doing great again, thanks for the new coaching and whatnot. So the bones of what make Georgia Southern, I think, are still there. Georgia Southern doesn't just compete, here in the, there's a lot of schools now. Kennesaw wasn't, we mentioned Kennesaw. GCSU wasn't a competitor back then. I've never even heard of the school until the last 5 or 10 years. And kids nowadays are looking outside the state more. There's ways to go to out of state. And again, as I mentioned the last time I was here, I've toured, I have 2 freshmen in college right now. I toured, I think, 12 or 13 myself, college campuses, everything from University of Miami down at one end to Duke at the other. Just one of my 2's brilliant, and she's in honors at UGA right now. The other one's at University of Tennessee. Neither one of them would come here to look at it. It's seen, and 46%. I think that's a stat that the university uses. 46% of the student population comes from the Atlanta area, and the feedback they get is it is what it is. It is a small town, and it's run down, and there's nothing shiny new like everywhere else. And I'm using those terms. That's not theirs. But the kids look at how good are the food options, how nice are the accommodations, and things like that. And we always encourage them to look at the caliber of the education, which I myself and most of my fraternity brothers and friends do quite well. And I think Georgia Southern education is outstanding. So, and everything that we get here out of it. 2 ways you can look at this, and I guess he mentioned it as status quo. Let's keep doing what we're doing. Hope everything gets better. The other one is redevelopment, and this is a redevelopment play. It's bringing something that is different, that is not here, but is on other campuses. You know, I mentioned last time that I was here, and again, I'm picking on Kennesaw just because I know it's there. This is the property I lost out on. We've spent 2 years chasing other property up at Kennesaw State. We didn't get it. Gilbane companies came in and paid cash for the site and bought it. This is essentially our product that we're presenting here, but at Kennesaw State. And Kennesaw already has a few of these. They're getting another one on this one called Bixby. And it's just off campus. It's across the street from the stadium. It's an old ice rink. But I bring that up because that's what you're competing against. I don't see myself, and this isn't being, you know, whatever. I don't really see myself competing with what's here today. I see myself competing with other schools. I think that the students who will come to ours, the 464, is about 2% of the student population currently at Georgia Southern. I think having this in the midst of you know, student housing on 3 sides of it, basically, is something that will bring 464 more students here, and maybe a whole bunch more than that. And hopefully, our product being one, will get more redevelopment, you know, the aura effect that you've heard, you know, more reinvestment, more development, and more redevelopment. That's who we see ourselves competing with. Lastly, as far as the PUD goes and whatnot, we, as I mentioned, we're already surrounded by the campus, and that's the world's biggest PUD. So I think it's not a spot zoning. If you were to look at, you know, what's all around us, we're surrounded literally on the south, the west, and the north, and the northeast corner, all by Georgia Southern University, which is a PUD. So I think we fit great in there versus being seen as whatnot. And according to the property, the majority of the property is owned by a lender, and the process that they went through to reclaim their property from non-payment or whatever it may have been, made all those leases cancelable. So as far as the current tenants that are in there, I've talked to one of them. I'm not sure if it was his client or somebody else that reached out to me, and I've left the door open for them to possibly be a tenant in the building in the future. But that's, you know, they're already cancelable leases. So as far as the argument that we were running anybody out, that was done when the previous property owner didn't keep up with his obligations to his lender.
Mr. Maxwell brought up a great point that just further pushes my entire argument. What year did you live at Park Place, Mr. Mayor?
I was at Park Place in 2002.
Okay. And it was obviously a very different environment than it is now when you lived there, correct?
It was going in the direction where it is now.
Okay. What do you think pushed it into that direction?
2004. What do I think? Mm-hmm. I think everything that you guys are discussing is a result of parking. Half of the people that live in Statesboro is parking, and then when you have that high parking rate, crime is going to be associated with that. So, I mean, it doesn't, you know, and Statesboro is not immune to it. So I think parking is the biggest issue that we're dealing with. Especially when we're looking at location. We're located right off of I-16 and not too far from I-95. 16 and 95 are major drug corridors. So when you got a young population, the average age in the city of Statesboro is about 22 years of age. When you got a young population, high poverty rate, and transportation corridors that have high drug trafficking, then we're going to be a highly targetable market for those that look to incorporate criminal enterprise for financial gain.
So since you said 2002 to 2004 you lived there.
Yeah.
Since then, are you aware of how many new properties have developed in Statesboro near the campus?
I know it's been a lot, but
It's been a lot. So the people like you that were here maybe for an education or for, you know, to have a decent life and not to be involved in crime, or moved away from that place to the nicer places. Mm-hmm. And the people who are involved in that lifestyle moved there because those owners had to drop their rates just to basically cut even, if they even cut even. Yeah. So it drove more criminal element into that area. And I would assume that you probably would not live there now with the way that it is. Okay. So why would we want to bring in more developments that's going to basically push that element, just like it was pushed into Park Place several years ago? Why are we going to bring in more bedrooms that are going to push that same element down the road closer to campus? Because if you wouldn't want to live there, and you wouldn't want your children to live there, why are we going to invite that closer to Georgia Southern? And if that doesn't put the whole argument that we've made into perspective, then nothing any of us say here today is going to. If you wouldn't live in that area, why are we going to force that area down the road to cause students to have to live in it?
Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Todd Minak. I am with Minak Signature Properties right down here on Savannah Avenue. I am here today representing Mrs. Charlene Dole. She is the widow of Mr. Henry Dole. A lot of you local folks remember Mr. Henry's haircuts. And you would have thought that Mrs. Dole would have hired someone with more haircut experience than I did. But nonetheless, I was the lucky guy. First, I'm going to tell you I'm in favor of this project, but not likely for the reasons that you would think that I might. I'm speaking now because I was here last month, and I wanted to reaffirm some of the arguments and some of the things that were being said last month to make sure that I was not missing anything. And my takeaway, in the sense that I have, is that everyone who has spoken has done so relatively artfully, and yet there are parts of their arguments that are absolutely right, and there are parts of their arguments that you can rebuttal and talk about for the rest of this day, of which we don't have time to do. We almost did that last time, but maybe not today. So, I'm not saying that any of them are wrong. In fact, there are a lot of excellent arguments. Occupancy, safety, crime, parking, increased ad valorem taxes, increased sales taxes, job creation, pedestrian friendly, capitalism. All of those things are on the table for discussion. So I feel reaffirmed in waiting and hearing all these things come up again today. Let me say that never more than today I admire what you do, because in hearing everybody that's even on opposite sides of the fence, it makes your job increasingly difficult to balance what to do. And I can sense, and I sensed it last time I was here, the grappling of the facts and where do you go and what do you do with all this information. And I know it's difficult, and my hat's off to you for your service. I imagine it's difficult for you to decide what and who to listen to. But let me just make a couple of observations. If McDonald's came in today and made a pitch for you to consider to reject the new Wendy's that's in town, it would ring a little hollow. If I came in here today and I said that I didn't want any other real estate companies in town, I think that's a great idea, by the way. But it would ring a little bit hollow. What if the city of Statesboro, right next door to the subject property, the news accidents paid the most money for any property that ever sold in Statesboro at that time? What if the city of Statesboro said, they've got one right down the street, and because they do, we don't want to jeopardize that store and potentially cannibalize that store and have one store closed? Is that our jobs as citizens and as councilmen to decide that? I think that's probably the market's job to decide that. So who do you listen to? You've got a planning department. You've got a planning commission. The planning commission voted unanimously. They heard all the facts, and they voted unanimously to approve this. Frank and his staff have worked very closely with the developer to come up with solutions to potential issues and have changed their minds from not supporting it fully to supporting it fully. Frank, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that's what I'm hearing you say. So you've got two processes in place that are your guys. They're the good guys. They're your old folks that are said, we bless this project. And part of that was the Right Start meetings, which involves the police department, the fire departments, all of your departments, for them to have input on what happens and what doesn't happen, and if there's something needs to be tweaked about the development. They asked for that at that time. And we're past all of that. We're at the point now of asking you for what we need to make the project work. This project's not unique. Almost every project in Statesboro requires some tweaking of an ordinance or variance to make it fit. And that's just good. That's why those things are in existence. That's why they're in place, so that we can tweak and make those things happen. You shouldn't approve this project either, because there's a gentleman sitting right here that wants to spend $50 million. That's not a good reason to approve the project. You shouldn't approve this project because I might make a commission if I make this statement. That's not a good reason. And the truth is that your roles and responsibility are much greater than that. All of you were voted into office because you share a mission. And those missions are written all over the pages of your master plan, in your mission statement, and your vision statement. This is going to be a little bit boring if the rest of it haven't already been. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to pick out some phrases in your master plan and your vision statements that are there for you to use as a map to go into a direction. It's your master plan. You guys paid a bunch of money to do it. Here's some terms. Economic development. Walkable neighborhood commercial areas. Interconnectedness with pedestrians and bikes. Citizen participation. We've had really good of that today. Minimization of traffic congestion. People that will be in this project are parking and stay in and walk into class and walk into the coffee shops and walk into the restaurants. Minimization of traffic congestion to become best city and the best state in the nation to locate and do business. That's in your master plan. The master plan drills down a little more with visions and land use activities like an activity center that evolves into pedestrian-oriented shopping, entertainment places that may also accommodate high-density residential. Redevelop shopping centers, encouraged to include diverse uses. Focus on redevelopment in areas of disinvestment. Is there any other place better than this for disinvestment? And encourage uses that are suitable for immediately surrounding character areas in new developments that contain a mix of residential and commercial uses and community facilities. This is in your master plan. Specifically in the commercial redevelopment section under suggested strategies, it recommends specific reductions and parking requirements for commercial and residential developments, particularly when nearby parking alternatives and transit is available. So how do you vote? I know you're grappling with this. In my opinion, that depends on direction. The direction that you want to see this city guided, and the legacy that you want to leave behind. In my mind, I see you, the mayor, and the councilman, as the CEO and the board of directors of the city of Statesboro. You have your processes in place. You have your planning department. You have your planning commission. They've been in the weeds for you. They've determined that this project is a viable project. These are your people. You pay them. They're your folks. And they're giving you the answers. Now, it's the CEO's job and the board of directors' job to make the decisions the CEOs and board of directors make. And that's to decide which direction you want to go. In my opinion, a vote to support this project is a vote in the right direction. is in support of all the plans that you have in your master plan and your business vision and mission statement. I ask you to boldly move into the future with opportunities that this project offers. A group of us not long ago went to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to study what they're doing right down there. And one of the terms that the mayor down there said, Mr. Collar, was that it took a lot of political will to accomplish a lot that they did. And I think that this group has that political will. It's time to exercise. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, we'll now bring us that part to a close, and then we'll ask, is there a motion to close the hearing by council? Is there a second? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, time for council discussion. Any discussion on behalf of council?
Yeah, I'd like to ask the chief what he thinks about every single person that has come up here has spoken about crime. I'd like to ask your assessment of what everyone has been bringing up around this area.
Mayor, council, thanks for having me notice. We know a couple things, right? We know that as lower socioeconomic levels grow, right, as the poverty level grows, that drives police calls for service. We know that as population density increases, that drives police calls for service. Not necessarily crime per se, but police calls for service, which include, helping EMS, fire, just general disorder kinds of crime. So that's all true. It disturbs me greatly, to be quite frank, at the amount of fear that's in the room. I understand that crime is an emotional issue for people, but there's also a practical side to crime, right? And so trying to find some balance, trying to keep that in perspective as we go about our day-to-day lives, I think is really important. Crime happens. It happens here. We certainly have crime, but we certainly have criminals who live here. If we lower rents, is that going to allow more people who might be inclined toward crime to live in those places? Yeah, potentially. I've arrested people who live in mansions behind gates, and I've arrested people who live on the street. People who are willing to prey on their neighbors is a mindset, right? That is not driven by poverty. So I can't give you any good wisdom or insight into how we solve all crime. We live in a constitutional republic that affords people freedoms to come and go. There's always going to be a percentage of people who use that freedom to prey on other people. Until we find a solution to that, we're not going to solve crime. We certainly have issues here. Our police officers are working hard, diligently every day to combat that problem. But I don't think that our problems necessarily are unique. Frankly, when you take a look at our demographics, that we do have a lot of poverty, that we have a tremendous amount of young people who live here. We know that young people, they're trying to figure out who they're going to be. They're trying to figure out, what's the boundary for me? What am I willing to do and get away with? And then the police are sort of there holding the line to push back and say, you took a step too far. And people are during those growing years from about maybe being a sophomore in high school until graduating from college, they're trying to figure that out. And so there's going to be natural conflict between the police representing, sort of the social norms of that community and those folks who are trying to push back against that. There's not an easy solution to that. I think that the folks who got up here and spoke, I think it was from the heart. And I think we need to keep that in mind, that people truly have a fear of crime. For me, as my 30th year in this business, crime has taken on a sort of a different, more practical sort of perspective to me, but I can't ever forget that people truly are afraid. They're afraid of those predators who live around, and we have to do everything we can to manage the perception of crime as well as the reality of crime. So I don't have a great magic answer for you. Is this going to make the community better or worse as it relates to crime? We're going to have to figure that out. I can just tell you that your police department is here to work alongside our department managers and to try to do all that we can to keep those undesirable people, particularly those predatory people, out of our community, locked up if possible, within the realities of the system that we have.
there any further discussion by council?
I would like to say, Margaret, and hopefully you'll invite us here next meeting.
Did you come last time?
Sorry, I would be, I apologize. It is my goal to drastically cut crime in the city. And I know what's going on in my district. I know it very well, especially being an appraiser in my day job. I like to come to your meetings, hear everything you have to say, and see, and not just crime, trash bins, anything that I can do to help. I want to help because you guys are a big force in this city, and I want to help. Saying that though, I will say that I am for this project for many reasons. Certainly not to put anybody out of business, certainly not to take business from anyone. I want every one of y'all to be 100% in selling and renting it $600 an apartment, a bed. I'd like y'all to be making that much money. But I am for this project. I believe this project is going to be down the road. But I'm here to help you. Help you make your business better.
Can I give you a specific
Okay,
example?
we're in council discussion, so we want to maintain the quorum. All right, any further discussion by council?
I'd like to make a couple comments. I heard several people say about poverty. I'd like to clarify the fact poverty does not necessarily mean crime. Not all folks who are in poverty status, they aren't out there knocking down doors or stealing. Crime is not equal to poverty. That's one thing. The second thing, planning department did a great job. Which they Frank working with development and these other things. And a lot of comments were made. I'd like to hear Mr. Kane comment though. As a recommendation, I'm sure, legal dog, reposition. And has everything been finished out of your position to make a recommendation, or do you need more time?
Councilman Jones, I do not see legal issues here with approval. Georgia state law has been, Georgia case law, and this is extremely clear that when it comes to zoning amendments, that if the land is not given its highest best use in the absence of that there being a detriment to the public welfare, that is what's seen as a taking. Now, as far as the variances go, under Georgia Home Rule, you're allowed to keep your variances; those do not have to be granted. But not granting the zoning map amendment in this case, unless there's a clear showing of a detriment to the public welfare, could be construed and actionable as unconstitutional taking of property.
Any further discussion by council?
Mr. Mayor. Hey, I'm Councilman Duke, and I've had the good fortune of living in Statesboro long enough to have a few comments about this. And I'm very, as a prior property owner and a rental college student, I've heard these arguments. So let me give a little background here from my perspective. My wife's bedroom, when she was a graced, a dirt road, was about right in the middle of this project. This was originally Harvey land that was sold in an arrangement to be the property that it is now. We have no financial interest, have not had for years in this property. But because of that, they moved right around the corner, down the road. I'm incredibly familiar with a lot of the issues that have been brought forward here. They concern me very much. I live less than a half a mile away from this property. I know the traffic issues. I'm just trying to get in and out. I know the traffic issues. I'm aware of the crime issues. And a lot of you, we're still a small town out there on the south side of Statesboro. Before landing Highway 67, that is going to be an economic generator beyond our not gonna be a 301. It's gonna be Highway 67 full lane to I-16. As you may remember, George Southern at one time, quite a few years ago, said that was gonna be the information card. And we are turning into that. So my vision for Statesboro includes this project, because it will be a stellar project on a prime piece of property that needs renovation. And I hear the need for renovation when any of you speak. I hopefully speak to a greater growth in Statesboro. It's happening right now. The amount of money being invested in this community is huge, and a lot of you do not know what we know sitting here. But I am highly optimistic that we will be able to address those renovation issues on that side of town. You do need help. I agree with Councilman Riggs. We're going to try to do a lot of things to help you. We're not Superman, but we can do our job as councilmen, in conjunction with the mayor, to address the proper growth of the city of Statesboro. This is a hugely important project for that renovation. It sits really in the heart of the campus, as it exists now. It's got campus all around. For those merchants beside it, I see a lot of customers, a lot of good customers coming right next door. The only question I leave you with is, when we make our decision, I hope you'll be able to support it, and we foster ourselves together as a community to address these issues, primarily of a safe community, and primarily as a small community that binds itself together. We have a lot of good projects going on to make Statesboro as attractive and even more so than we know now. The Blue Mile is really happening. It's just beginning. So thank you.
Any further discussion by council?
And Mayor, if I may. First of all, I think it is important to echo what Councilman Jones says, and that is that while there is a correlation between poverty and crime, you cannot just blame crime on poverty. My district has got some lower income type developments. I've got some HUD housing up in my district, and quite frankly, some of those are as safe as anywhere else in this community, despite the fact that they're filled with low-income folks. So low-income folks does not necessarily mean crime. And if you want to wonder why there's some crime around campus and why there's drugs around campus, who do you think is buying all those drugs? It's probably the students, not the locals here buying those drugs. Now, is that the case that 100% of that's the case? No. But I mean, clearly, students want to have a good time is part of the reason why there's crime in the first place. So I get a little concerned when we just throw the poor folks under the bus just because they don't have any money. And I'll tell you, Park Place, I know we keep bringing Park Place up. But Park Place is Park Place because those owners have nothing but apathy for their places. They don't care. They don't care about the quality of people they put in there. And it's clear that that apathy is what is driving the problem. It's not necessarily the low rents. As I look at the sheet that you guys even gave me, you look at Henley Properties. I mean, one of the lowest rents per unit effectively, and yet they're not only are they at 100%, but they're probably some of the safer places in our community. So to suggest that crime and the price of your rent are directly correlated, again, I don't think those are, that is necessarily appropriate.
They don't include low other.
Decorum.
Well, then, if they don't include utilities, then this spreadsheet should be a little different then. Either way, what I'm suggesting is they're dealing with the same situation that you guys are all dealing with, and yet they have occupancy that exceeds the average. You know, the other thing we can think about, we're talking about 1,500 open beds. You know, 93% of those open beds were as a result of 111 South and the Hamptons, the two new properties coming to town. Yet, when the Hamptons was the last one, I think. When the Hamptons got built, no one came in and objected to the fact that occupancy was going to drop. We didn't see folks coming in when 111 South was being built and saying occupancy was going to drop or bringing all these things up. So, in many and yet we're hearing from the folks that just built that, hey, I just built mine, now we can't build anymore. And that's not exactly the way we can operate. And also, I'd like to say that I think the council and the mayor, I think we're concerned with more than just tax revenues. Clearly, that the plaza's got a history. We'd like to see that history maybe transform into something different. We just had the Gatwick case resolved. I'm a big fan of synchronicity and those kinds of things, and it feels to me like this is a good opportunity now that that case is behind us, to put this behind us even further. And let me also say I have a history, I have a personal history of living in college towns that were expanding rapidly. And one of the issues, if I could just throw this out to the apartment community, one of the issues you guys are having with getting your occupancies up is that a lot of you are by the bed type establishments. Somebody like myself who might consider one of these apartments. Well, I'm not going to rent out an apartment when you're going to lock the third bedroom and I don't get to rent it out. So I think in these other towns that I've been in, as they continue to grow and they continue to put more development near the campus and some of these periphery apartments change, well, they would slowly change into family or residents or local folks, but that is going to be more difficult if you continue to operate on a bed-by-bed basis. If you rent out the entire apartment. So I guess what I'm getting at is the apartments themselves are creating some of their own issues.
Is the new project
Decorum.
This is what I see. I've lived in college towns for 30 years. I've seen this. I lived near the University of Texas. I lived near the University of Florida when it grew 15,000 people in a decade. Apartments flying up everywhere. I've seen these transitions before. And some of it can be blamed on crime, some of it can be blamed on the students, but these are problems that are far more complex than just saying, we're going to attract poor people and then we're going to have crime. That's just an overly simplistic way to look at it. I certainly think there's been some concern with the parking, and if the university and the developer and our planning department is comfortable with parking, those are the concerns we can look at. This is a tough one. I understand where you guys are coming. It's tough trust me, I worked in the hotel business. Occupancy is everything. I get it. Occupancy is everything. And yet at the same time, we have an obligation to the property owners to follow the rules and then give them an opportunity. And as Mr. Manak said, we can't just, because we don't want a 13th chicken restaurant, we can't just ban chicken restaurants. Just because we're going to have a little bit of occupancy down, we can't just, those kind of business competition concerns can't be how we make our decision. We can listen to those things, but that can't be how we make our decision. What are we doing with this property? Is it going to benefit the city? Is it going to benefit the university? Is it going to make that area better? Is it going to make our town better? I think it will create some challenges. Every development creates challenges. Books a Million, when it came, created some challenges. But I think as a community, we can face those challenges together. We have a good, solid police department now that is addressing the issues of crime. And as much as we want to talk about crime, generally speaking, violent crime is lower here. That a lot of the crime is crimes of opportunity, robberies, breaking and enterings, these kinds of things. How many, Chief told me something like 30 or 40 guns were stolen out of glove boxes. unlocked glove boxes last year in Statesboro. What is any of this gonna do to prevent that? You know, you see what I'm saying? So, I know we haven't heard from Jeff yet, no, he said it was good. Okay. But, I mean, we have an obligation to move the city forward. I think this is a good development for the area. I do sympathize with the property owners and the challenges that you guys are facing, and you know, markets are cyclical, and I believe that the market will come back if Georgia Southern continues to grow. And in order for Georgia Southern to continue to grow, we have to continue to find new ways to attract the students to our town in an ever-competing market.
Thank you, Councilor Moore. Is there any further discussion by council? Okay. All right, as a point of clarification, when I mentioned the correlation between poverty and crime, that's a statistical fact. And I think I'm the only person that's up here that's actually worked in this area on a professional capacity. So when I speak of poverty and the correlation thereof, as it relates to crime, that's what I'm speaking to specifically. I grew up in a poor family, we weren't criminals. So I think it was kind of I think this is a great opportunity to be very clear on that, because it's clear that it was a kind of a miscommunication, and I wanted to make sure my counsel didn't misunderstand what I was saying. All right, with that being said, I'd like to call for a vote. Is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve with all staff recommendations.
Okay, is there a second?
Actually, Mayor, it was not included that last statement prior to building permit being issued on A. So that A statement at the very end is add prior to building permits being issued.
Right. Building permits being issued.
Thank you.
All right, is there a second?
I'll make a second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Let's show that the project has passed. We move down to agenda item 10.
Let's go to it.
Or at least say all four numbers.
So that'd be B 180907, B 180908, B 180909, and RZ 0906.
All right, so, yes, I'm amending my motion to include all four. Is there a second? Is there a second?
And staff recommendations.
And staff recommendations. And,
With the amendment,
yeah.
that no building permit will be issued prior to.
Yeah, I think the amendment was recognized in the first. Is there a second? All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right, we'll move down to agenda item 10, which is consideration of a motion to approve resolution 2018-30, a resolution to dispose of a portion of West Cherry Street between South College and MLK Drive. Judge?
Mayor, I'm hurricane.
Okay.
Mayor, Council, this is back at our last meeting on October 16th, there was council approval to abandon and insert a portion of West Cherry Street between South College and MLK. The resolution before you today is the resolution would be to dispose of the property to West District Development LLC with no exchange of funds for it. However, they would assume maintenance of the roadway and would also warrant in the actual warranty deed that public access in that thoroughfare would be maintained in perpetuity. And the warranty deed that is in y'all's packet is not the one that is up for signature. I got an email from Brian Ken on this one. So the grantees on it, and that one that's in the packet is West Development, District Development, and Whitfield Science Holdings. The one that would actually be executed by Mayor McCollar would be the one for, if approved, would be the one that would grant the interest to West Development, for West District Development LLC. And this is allowed pursuant to OCGA 3274A2B, which allows governments to negotiate sales of these abandoned properties without really any sort of restrictions on them, as long as the value of it is under $75,000, which is the case here.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll move down to agenda item number 11, other business from the city council. Is there any other business from the city council?
There I'm going. Yeah, if you would. Councilman Riggs and I have discussed this numerous times. We've actually discussed this a couple of times throughout the course of the year about putting a process in place in the ordinances for approving and presenting ordinances and things like this. You know, John and I jokingly and lovingly call it the anti-franking, but it's essentially in the past, and this is Mayor even before you were elected, where council would be surprised by presentations of ordinances or these types of things. And so we've had a kind of an informal process in place to go through and put ordinances before the council and then give it to Kane and present it and everything else. But there's nothing formalized. There's nothing been and so when I talked to Councilman Riggs about it again, since this was like primarily a concern of his, and he said, hey, write something up for it, present it to council, and then we can talk about it. Without going through all the details, it's pretty straightforward. The idea would be that anytime staff, mayor, and council would want to change an ordinance, we bring up the idea before the council. The council then gives a thumbs up and says, Kane, please write up an ordinance. Kane writes it up. We do a first reading. If there's no significant changes to the first reading, we move to a second reading where there's a final document and we vote on it. If there's a significant change after the first reading, we have maybe a second first reading. Allows the public to comment. And then once we get to the second reading, we've got a finalized ordinance that everybody can understand clearly where we're at before we pass it. In particular, I think from a staffing level too, this also takes some of the conflict out for Kane, and hopefully Kane, you can address that a little bit, where one of us comes to him and asks him to write something up, or somebody from the public comes and asks Kane to write up an ordinance, and that puts him in kind of a position because he doesn't work for any one of us. He doesn't work for anybody out here. He works for the city and the mayor and council as a group. So the three ideas really of this particular thing is to ensure proper communication between all the members of council, the mayor, and staff. To ensure that ordinances are being vetted during public meetings as opposed to being written behind the scenes and then just dropped in their lap. And then just provide an official structure, which we've had a formal structure for, gosh, now 3-4 years probably. But this would formalize that structure to prevent any surprises. So at this point, really, all I'm asking is that we hand this over to Kane, have him look at it, have him write up a more formal presentation, and then we would bring it to council just like any other one. Kane, your thoughts?
I think I would appreciate this more formal, open guidance. I think this would be. I think the transparency would be, and the guidance from mayor and council would be very helpful in keeping the non-conflicting here on any sort of matter.
Councilman Riggs, like I said, we've talked about this, we've had to deal with this, your thoughts?
For years. Yes, something like this would greatly help. But in the spirit of this, I'd like to let everybody back here that just got this, just take a look at it and talk about it. That's what I would be nice.
That's what I was going to say. I'm not suggesting that I'm opposed to it, but I just want to.
Absolutely. In the spirit of it, let's go back and talk about it.
I hadn't
seen it at all.
No, I haven't either.
Yeah.
Yes, I didn't want to be fair, I didn't want to give it to one or two or the cane or, I wanted to present here in a public meeting, out in the open. This was an idea again that John and I have talked about, you know, a number of times. It's been mentioned here before. You're absolutely right. I'm bringing this up. Nobody has seen this besides me.
So can we agree to review it
Yeah, let
and
us
give
review it.
any thoughts or questions that we may have?
And then directive at the next meeting.
Yeah,
Let this be
exactly,
written.
yeah.
Just start on it.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, I mean, so maybe we could can we at least agree to put this on the agenda for next time? Even if we talk about it informally?
Yes, just to direct me to craft the agenda.
Yes.
Or to not?
Yeah.
The whole idea is to say in a meeting, hey, Kane, please write an ordinance. Hey, Kane, don't write an ordinance. That way we all know if a new ordinance is coming down the pike. You, all of us, that way staff is on board. That way we're all on the same page. That there's none of this behind the scenes from any of us. That we're all just working together. This is something that we've, in practice, followed for quite some time. But there's been some question about the actual steps. And so all this would do is put the steps on paper where we.
Again, I'm not opposing it, I just want to review it.
No, I totally understand. Like I said, none of you all have seen this. Nobody in this room has seen it. Nobody's seen it.
All right.
Appreciate that.
Is there any other discussion by council? I do have some discussion I wanted to bring to your attention. I had a lobbyist organization reach out to me, and I talked to them a couple of times. A lobbyist organization. Yeah. Reach out to me, and I talked to them a couple of times in regards to representation for the city. Myself and the city manager sat down and had a discussion with them, and so what we was thinking is that we would like to bring them before council, so you guys can hear what we heard, and then figure out if we want this type of representation or not. And because of this is not a, because of the nature of it, we have to go to an RFQ to give other entities the opportunity to bid for it. So I wanted to bring them before and kind of let you guys hear what we heard. So I want to get some feedback from you guys as to what your thought process is on
What kind of representation?
it's basically a lot of this organization to go to the state level to go back and try to bring back resources here. I think former state representative Lane is associated with the organization. What the capacity is, I'm not exactly sure. But I wanted you guys to kind of get an idea of what was going on and kind of get a conversation that we heard. In the conversation, it was a good conversation, but don't want to move forward without you guys having some input.
My immediate thought, without having heard them, but I'm certainly willing to hear them, is that in our relationships that we have with our representation state, I wouldn't understand the need, but I'm more than willing to listen.
Yeah.
Well, and I know GMA already has a lot of GMA.
Yeah, that's what GMA's job is.
That's right, and we pay
But,
we pay them for that.
But this is specific to the city of Statesboro. And to my understanding, the other communities that we look at, as far as us being able to compete, this is how they're getting additional funding for their communities. Is that they're going out and they're getting these organizations to represent them specifically, even though they are a part of GMA. They're going out and getting these organizations to represent them specifically to bring in additional funding. And I know that we got like maybe some waterway projects that may be coming up that this would be extremely beneficial to, as far as acquiring additional funding.
And Mayor, I trust that in that presentation they will present those other municipalities that they
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, they sent me an email, and I'll send that email to Ms. Sue with a document attached, and have Ms. Sue disseminate that to council. Okay. So you guys take a look, city, the exact same thing that I'm saying. Okay? Very good. All right. Is there any other discussion by council?
See, we can work together.
Yeah, we can. All right, seeing that our city manager is not here, we'll see if there's any public comments at this point in time. Okay. All right, and so we'll move down to agenda item 14, which is consideration of a motion to enter into executive session to discuss personnel matters, real estate, and or potential litigation in accordance with OCGA 50-14-3B. Is there a second?
I'm sorry, what was it?
Motion to move to executive session.
Yeah.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Where you going to?
The last one?
Oh, yeah.